Hi there, it's Ryan for another CHA video, and this time I'm talking about 4 lists for the army. CHA is much more limited than even MO, and as such, diversity of lists really comes down to your core and Harris fire teams, maybe some solo pieces. We have a lot of really nice warbands to choose from, or not to choose. This video will aim at those who are really looking to dip into Caledonia or starting going, man, what do I do with all these warbands? I really think Caledonia needs fire teams to stay relevant in shooting. We don't really have great shooting unless we're leveraging that or coordinated orders or doggo missiles. In failing that, avoiding them with either smoke or smart moving is our best bet. This doesn't mean we lack solo shooters, although they usually have some sort of good gimmick to help, such as climbing plus, mimeticism, surprise attack, arm 5, and at close ranges, total immunity. All of my lists will contain at least a Harris fire team, since I think, like most sectorials, that offers the potential for all-fat, no-filler fire teams. We lost a lot with the purity changes and with Greys no longer getting the volunteer bonus, but this has allowed us to approach things very differently now. First list. So I also like to do a sensible any-comers list. Infinity doesn't really do net decking, which is why these are guides, and the lists entirely become dependent on things like table layout and if the opponent has multispectral visors. This is an incredibly conventional Caledonian list that doesn't lean into warbands as much, which means we are not relying on smoke, Wallace, and regular orders to fuel assault. Only really McMurray in that regard. So, the key PCs in this list are kind of obvious. We have a 5-man volunteer core with 3 Greys that will act as an aggressive core to shoot things with a damage 16, BS 14, HMG, with plenty of smoke, grenades, and templates to throw around as necessary. Our lieutenant is in this core, so you need to be a bit careful moving up, but ideally you use your HMG and 2 template troopers to screen out what you need to and fight at range. Use this core to take out an ARO piece that you can get good ranges on that would either hurt / counter McMurray or the SAS, who can do a lot in this list. The second fire team is a Harris of an NCO Wulver for order efficiency, a Grey HMG for gunfighting, and Isabel for specialists. They are here to push up much easier and more nimbly than the core and get into and hold the midfield. The big thing here is that burst 5, damage 16 HMG as before, but shoots a little worse. If you have a heavy armor situation, the Mormor has his T2 rifle with AP and damage 15, or if it's a tag, we can try to take it out with Isabel. I really like this core, and it has a lot of success for me as it covers a lot of bases. It even comes with smoke, so you can smoke down and grab an objective. I really like it. Plus the Kayusha, we can try and guided missile strike for a laugh. Next main piece is McMurray. With total immunity, high fizz, and regular and smoke grenades, getting up the board should be easy, and he can clear any non-camo midfielder trying to hide with a super jump. Failing that, if you have an opponent with a nice core of light or medium infantry, you can blast them up the board to template them, or punch a tag, which if you saw my last video, he will abuse in melee, and in general can be an potent alpha strike piece to kneecap your opponent once you get there. He is Silhouette 6 and a warband which is largely map dependent, but he has the tools to make it work, just not against multispectral visor snipers. But that's why we have the core Harris to deal with that. Now, usual hangers on, 2 SAS to push buttons and get cards, and in this list, if you want to use it to forward observe and then guided missile strike. It's not really a good idea, but it's an idea. Basically, I had 9 points and added a mule. Swap it for a Galwegian if you want. I'll get into that in a minute, but yes, 2 SAS, staples of the list for many reasons. Warcore and Cateran are ARO pieces, should not surprise, and can have their orders converted if necessary. The Cateran can be aggressive if you want, but there are other nice pieces in Group 2 that would need the orders more. A 1-1-2 motorized will allow us to heal up any down things in midfield that is vitally important, maybe a Grey McMurray, or more usefully grabbing an objective with a fast mimetic and soon to be able to take cover specialist. So to recap, the game plan is to use McMurray or the fire teams as an aggressive hammer to try and break your opponent and score objectives. Then use the SAS and the 1-1-2 to pick up points as necessary. The general structure of this list I think is sound but could be tweaked and points redistributed. We only have 2 ARO pieces, maybe more, and this list kinda needs to go first, so we could change around the 2 fire teams comp, removing some Greys from the core to put points into anti-armor or ARO pieces, like Camel Scots or Catarans. Or more warbands, which also works. The Harris could be swapped for a Mormor HMG instead of the Grey, and the Grey could be either a boarding shotgun or T2 to save more points for warbands, or upgrading the mule to a full TR bot or repeater. Solo pieces could be upgraded to Uxia or more dogs. Finally, you could swap members in the group around a lot, so the solo pieces in Group 2, McMurray 1-1-2 and the mule in Group 2, and move the Harris into Group 1 to give them full 10 orders to take advantage of. Swapping the core and the Group 2 could work, but it doesn't have the guns to make that work in my opinion. The Greys need a missile launcher version for that. So, a full Wulver core. This isn't my list. I got it from McGenevis on the IGL Discord, and oh boy, it's a doozy. The brief was a 10-man Caledonian Highlander army list, which is asking a lot, but it's for Panic Room, which, I mean, this absolutely it succeeds at, sort of. I don't think I'd ever run this, but let's talk about it because I think it's technically also a big boys list, but I don't know if it's a very good one. Wallace is the lieutenant and makes the core pure, so it's a nice BS-15 AP Spitfire or BS-16 T2 rifle, which is great. It's got mad bulk, which means it will be hard to shift. For those who don't know, Wulvers are a super premium warband. They have 2 full wounds, arm 3, and are effectively non-hackable heavy infantry. The downside is they can't complete any heavy infantry classified or count for missions, like Frostbite, which is a pain, but it's true 2 wounds, not on Silhouette 6 in Ariadna, so I'm down for that. Cadian brings melee threat, which is nice, because burst 2 or 3 on him means he can turn things like Ajax to dust. You have 4 solo pieces in 2 Cameronians and McMurrah and Uxia. I've spoken about McMurrah before, and Cameronians just take that role, but do it just a bit cheaper and without the martial arts 3, so really it's if you want to take on more melee threats or not, which is entirely up to you. I think McMurrah is a good upgrade from a Cameronian, which are a fine base. Uxia is basically here and starved for orders, and she's also the Squishies model here. Also here to kneecap your opponents if the 3 dogs, 2 Catarans, and 10 wooden core wouldn't have already done so. Again, this works for Panic Room, as it would be a nightmare to shift all these wounds, total immunity, and templates. Yeah, I mean, try it out if you have the time. I'm certainly tempted to, but I don't think I'd recommend it. Okay, so I tweaked the list slightly for something like Firefight or Quadrant Control missions. So it's a full 15 orders and really taking advantage of Wallace's inspiring leadership. Core got made diet, but is still pure. Goodbye, Cadian, I'll find a use for you one day. Same points as above for the full Wulver core, which will shoot well enough to be hard to remove with templates and will shred in melee. Each Wulver can solo a Knight of Justice fairly well in my opinion. McMurrah again, I just think he's worth taking. Uxie now has some more orders, which is great, which means you can actually really kneecap the opponent if you go first with that infill +6 and try to cause some mayhem before she gets crumped. Alternatively, and arguably less favorably, you can use her like an SAS and snipe some objectives and maybe hunt in the midfield. The 112 here again, which I think is especially needed since there is no paramedic or specialist in the core, so you can move up and heal and steal boxes. I don't think paramedicing a Wulver is a bad shout. They're like Fizz 14, which is a 70% chance to stand back up, maybe for helping hold his own, or once Achilles is dead. The T2 Cataran and Paramedic, I mean, the Cataran is going to die, but I guess Paramedic might keep him up, or you play him aggressively and leave Paramedic as home as a cheerleader. Speaking of cheerleaders, we have Wallace, which means 15 regular orders and 4 impetuous orders to make yourself with 3 Galwegians, making for our expensive core with cheap regular orders. With impetuous, they can run up and smoke. Also, drop zone defense for combat jumper, personator, or anything that tries to snipe Wallace. Really, this is a fun list. I'm more likely to run it in less objective-focused missions, but will be one that's hard to shift unless your opponent rocks all BTS all the time. From one pain train to the next, showing that greys are really cheap. The last core was 155 points for 9.5 wounds, and this one is 121 for 5 wounds and 5 half wounds. Seems like a lot, but I swear this one can help carry its own. First of all, it's pure, so that sweet +3, which means BS 16 on every member. It means Fizz 16 for every member who has a thrown weapon, and BS 22 for every member that has a hitboard shotgun, which is a lot. Specifically breaks down to 2 HMGs, because we can afford the redundancy in both SWC and points. This means we can more confidently move into the active turn shooting game with 16s, burst 5, damage 16 HMGs, which is something I'm not sure I want to tangle with. If something does get close and templates their stuff, it will be rather unfortunate for our greys, although they have to deal with the cacophony of different T2 and high damage shots. We have 112s, SAS, McMurrah, Uxia, and a Catran all make a return because they are solid list members. 2 Tractor Mules now appear as our cheap order monkeys since we're not running Wallace. He's only in 2 of the 4 lists, but I run at him a lot of the time, so I'm just trying to bring diversity to this video. 2 volunteers are our decoy and our regular lieutenant. You could swap the lieutenant for the grey lieutenant, but I was slightly more confident I could protect them at the back. Finally is a secondary ARO piece, the Scots Guard missile launcher. It's not quite a hidden deployment missile launcher, but it's an easy decoy for the Catarans, so an opponent may misjudge it and could get flattened. This is basically thanks to the points saved from going from a Wulver core to a Grey core. Plus with the assault pistol, it doesn't really have a -3 range band until you're trying to fight snipers. He's also harder to kill than the Caravan being arm 3, but harder to move because he lacks the climbing plus. Now, you could swap in Wallace and out the Scots Guard, or change out the lieutenants. This list is really for missions to dominate quadrants, keep points high in missions such as Firefight or Frostbite, or try to outgun less active shooter factions like Nomads. Even better, all the HI here are not hackable, so only spotlights can affect you with Whip 13, and you're no worse to reset if needed. A lot of evergreen units to take advantage of the big fire team, or some very competent solo pieces. So my script says this is the silly Wallace list, but I have straight up run this and it went really well until I had to deal with the Swiss miss and an Aquila guard basically hard countering this. So word of warning if you play this list, it's been tweaked. It's one less dog, but one more Cateran so I can do some defense. Alright, group 1 has 7 orders and 6 of them are also impetuous. Here you're going to use impetuous on turn 1 to move up units and throw as much smoke you need as cover. Then you're going to use either Cameronians or McMurray to run up and kill whatever your target is. The more safely you can trade up, the better. Also, God help impersonators who you can just layer the Highlanders around Wallace to protect him. Honestly, you could put Wallace in either group to leverage that coordinated order. It's up to you. Important note, impetuous orders are optional and the debuff is not, so if you don't want to move the Highlanders, don't. Group 2 is all about solo and Harris species. Maybe should have put more order monkeys here like the Galwegians, but that's a seasoning sort of thing to be honest. So that lovely Harris is back. You can grab objectives, you get 9 orders to play with, which are 8 regular and 1 NCO, and can shred armor when it's needed. Absolutely worth the 88 points. Only Teutonic Knights really do it better. The 112 motorized here just to be able to make sure they stay alive and literally everything else. 2 Caterans to start in Camel to help save orders, and as active or ARO snipers. Finally, both the SAS and Utia to tangle in the midfield. I ran the Progenitor list in DCAT. Really all they done was to walk up and kill some HVTs and then cock up some smoke throws. That game really could have been a draw with some better screening and more experience on my half. Any suggestions on improving the list? Well, I think you could maybe swap the Highlanders for a War Core and then 1 Cataran to a T2 rifle, maybe redo the groups like I said, bring the SAS and the Cataran into group 1 and maybe put a Cameronian in group 2, definitely putting one of the Galwegians in group 2. We could also tweak the Harris so it's a warmer HMG. I don't know if we'll get that use out of the NC order with Wallace's coordinated. To get better use of them, stick them in group 2 so we can coordinate with the 2 Catarans and maybe a solo piece to start blasting. I think it's worth just before ending the video to really talk about Wallace's inspiring leadership. In this and the Wulver list, we utilise Wallace to maximise not just the number of regular orders, but the number of orders in general. I don't need to be worrying about 4 irregular orders and basically feeling like a hand is being tied behind my back. Sure, I could bring 2 mules to account for it and maybe 2 volunteers, since I have super cheap LTs, but it means McMurray or Cameroni and the 2 Camerons are still a command token drain if I want to use those orders proactively, not on those 4 models. In general, Wallace trades being an obvious weak point in your list for greater list flexibility. If you can mitigate the former, I believe you can get great benefits from the latter. Overall, I really like this list as a sort of slightly more memey, but largely playable list. So, thank you for watching. I hope you now have a much better idea to build Caledonian lists, and you can get them onto the table more. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and thank you very much for watching again.